Have you ever taken a sip of your morning coffee and suddenly felt a flash of fear, wondering if this one simple habit might be quietly damaging your kidneys? If you've ever been told your creatinine is creeping up, your eGFR is slipping, or that you should cut back on coffee just to be safe, then this isn't just another health video. This could directly affect your future. Because here's the hard truth most people never hear clearly. Enough kidney damage rarely causes pain. It doesn't come with obvious warning signs, and it often progresses silently for years until one day the conversation suddenly shifts to medications, strict food rules, or even dialysis. And for millions of Americans, coffee sits right at the center of that anxiety. Some doctors warn against it, others say it's harmless, and most people are left stuck in the middle, staring at their cup each morning, wondering if they're helping their body or slowly hurting it. I'm Dr. Richard Hale, a board-certified physician, and for years I've worked with patients who did everything right. They drank more water, cut salt, followed their lab results carefully, yet still watched their kidney numbers drift in the wrong direction. And one of the most common questions they ask me is this: "Doctor, do I really have to give up coffee?" And this question matters now more than ever, because over the past few years, large, high-quality studies involving hundreds of thousands of people have completely changed what we know about coffee and kidney health. Not opinions, not trends, but real data. And the conclusions are surprising even to many doctors. But there's a catch, because coffee can either support your kidneys or quietly work against them, depending on how much you drink when you drink it. And what you add to it details most people are never told. So today I'm going to break this down, clearly show you what the latest science actually says, and give you a simple, realistic way to decide what's right for your body without fear, guilt, or confusion, because this may completely change how you look at your next cup of coffee. For years, coffee has been treated like a guilty pleasure for anyone worried about their kidneys. If your lab numbers weren't perfect, coffee was often the first thing blamed, the first habit doctors told you to cut just in case. And that's exactly where the misunderstanding began. Because when you look at how this advice actually plays out in real life, something doesn't add up. I've seen patients who gave up coffee, completely did everything they were told, and still watched their kidney numbers slowly worsen. And I've seen others who kept drinking coffee carefully, consistently, and stayed stable for years. That contradiction is what pushed researchers to look deeper, and what they found over the last few years has quietly rewritten the story. Let me share a simple example. A patient in his early 60s came to me, anxious, convinced coffee was destroying his kidneys. His creatinine had risen slightly, his eGFR had dipped, and every morning he felt guilty holding a cup of coffee. He asked the same question most people do: is this making things worse? Instead of guessing, we looked at the data together. And that's where the science becomes impossible to ignore. In 2020, a large meta-analysis combining 12 long-term studies followed more than 500,000 people for over 2 decades. The results were striking. Regular coffee drinkers had a significantly lower risk of developing chronic kidney disease, lower rates of protein leaking into the urine, and even a substantially lower risk of dying from kidney-related causes. This wasn't a short trial or a trend-based claim. It was decades of real-world outcomes. And the story didn't stop there. Newer analyses published between 2023 and 2025, involving tens of thousands of adults in the United States, showed that people who drank moderate amounts of coffee, around 1.5 to 3 cups per day, had meaningfully lower odds of chronic kidney disease even after accounting for age, blood pressure, and diabetes. That detail matters because it tells us coffee wasn't just a marker of healthier people. The association held up even when the biggest risk factors were removed. In other words, coffee itself was doing something. This is where most people get stuck, though. They hear coffee might be safe and stop listening. But safety isn't the real takeaway. The real shift is understanding that coffee may actually be protective under the right conditions, and that blindly cutting it out doesn't automatically protect your kidneys. That realization alone changes how you think about every morning habit, every lab result, every quiet worry you've carried. But knowing that coffee isn't the villain is only the first layer of the story, because the bigger question is why these benefits appear in the first place. And that answer takes us much deeper inside the body than most people ever expect. Once the fear around coffee begins to fade, a new question naturally takes its place. If coffee isn't the enemy, can it actually change the course of kidney decline? This is where the conversation becomes far more serious because for most people, kidney disease isn't about sudden failure. It's about slow, silent progression. I think of a woman I met in her late 50s who told me I don't feel sick, but every year my numbers get a little worse. That quiet drift is what frightens patients the most, and it's also where coffee's role becomes surprisingly important. Large-scale research has shown that moderate coffee intake is consistently linked to a lower risk of chronic kidney disease. But beyond risk alone, newer studies began asking a more meaningful question: does coffee affect how fast kidney function declines? A 2023 meta-analysis brought a subtle but powerful insight. Regular coffee drinkers experienced a slower rate of decline in kidney filtration over time. On paper, the difference looks small, but in real life, that small difference can mean years of preserved kidney function. When decline is measured in fractions each year, slowing the slope even slightly can delay dialysis medications and complications far longer than most people realize. The protective pattern didn't stop with chronic disease. Long-term observational studies following more than 14,000 adults for over 2 decades found that people who drank 2 to 3 cups of coffee daily had about a 20% lower risk of acute kidney injury. That matters because acute kidney injury often acts like a tipping point. It can accelerate long-term damage even after apparent recovery. Avoiding those sudden hits gives the kidneys breathing room they desperately need. Then there's kidney stones, another fear many people quietly carry. Genetic and population-based data published in 2024 suggest coffee drinkers have a lower likelihood of stone formation. Increased urine flow combined with antioxidant effects appears to reduce crystal buildup over time. For someone who has passed a kidney stone even once, that protection is not theoretical, it's deeply personal. At this point, many viewers start thinking, so coffee is good, I should drink more. And this is where I slow the conversation down because this isn't about quantity, it's about context. The benefit shows up consistently at moderate intake, not extremes. More isn't better, and timing, preparation, and individual sensitivity matter more than most headlines ever mention. If you're watching this and recognizing your own habits, maybe drinking coffee late in the day, or using it to push through fatigue, I want you to pause and reflect. Have you ever wondered whether your routine is supporting your kidneys or quietly working against them? Leave a comment below because these patterns are far more common than people admit. Here's the key takeaway so far. Coffee isn't just neutral. It may help reduce risk, slow decline, and protect against sudden injury when used wisely. But knowing that still isn't enough, because the real question isn't whether coffee helps, it's how it works inside your body and what separates a protective habit from a harmful one. And that's where the next part of this story becomes even more important. Up to this point, we've talked about outcomes: lower risk, slower decline, fewer sudden kidney hits. But once people accept that coffee may actually help, the next question becomes unavoidable. How does a simple drink do all of this? Because without understanding the why, most advice stays shallow and easy to misapply. I remember a patient who said to me, I don't need another rule, I need to know what's happening inside my body. And that's exactly where the science becomes both fascinating and empowering. Coffee isn't just caffeine. It's a complex mixture of more than 1,000 bioactive compounds, and many of them interact directly with kidney biology. One of the biggest drivers of kidney damage over time is chronic inflammation combined with oxidative stress. These processes quietly injure the delicate filtering structures called glomeruli, long before lab numbers spike. Coffee is unusually rich in polyphenols and chlorogenic acids, natural antioxidants that help dampen this inflammatory signal. Multiple laboratory and population studies show these compounds reduce oxidative stress markers, which matters because less oxidative stress means less microscopic damage, accumulating year after year. There's also the issue of scarring. Progressive kidney disease often advances through fibrosis, healthy tissue slowly replaced by stiff, non-functional scar tissue. Experimental data suggests caffeine can suppress pathways linked to fibrotic signaling, including TGF-beta activity. That doesn't mean coffee reverses damage, but it may slow the very process that turns early kidney strain into irreversible loss. Slowing fibrosis even modestly changes the timeline of disease in ways patients actually feel. Blood flow plays a role too. Your kidneys are incredibly sensitive to circulation. Poor micro blood flow inside the nephron increases pressure and accelerates damage. Caffeine has been shown to improve nitric oxide availability, which helps regulate vascular tone. In simple terms, better flow means gentler filtration. Over time, that mechanical relief matters just as much as biochemical protection. Then there's metabolism. Coffee has consistently been linked to improved insulin sensitivity. That's not just a diabetes conversation, it's a kidney conversation. Better glucose handling reduces glycation stress inside kidney tissue, lowering long-term strain on the filtration system. This is one reason coffee often shows benefits in people with metabolic risk, not just those with diagnosed disease. But here's the part that surprises even many clinicians. Coffee doesn't stop at the kidneys. Its polyphenols alter the gut microbiome, shifting bacterial populations toward ones that produce more short-chain fatty acids. These compounds travel through the bloodstream and reduce systemic inflammation, including inside the kidneys. In other words, some of coffee's kidney protection may begin in the gut, not the cup. If you're listening closely, you might be thinking, then coffee must always be good. And that assumption is exactly where people get into trouble. Because mechanisms only help when conditions are right, dose timing, and context determine whether these pathways protect or backfire. So while understanding why coffee can help is powerful, it still doesn't answer the most practical question people face every day. When does coffee stop helping and start causing harm? And that distinction, often ignored, can quietly determine whether a daily habit supports your kidneys or undermines them. Once people understand how coffee can help the kidneys, this is usually where a dangerous misunderstanding begins. I see it all the time. Someone hears coffee as protective and quietly turns that into coffee can't hurt me. And that single leap, small as it seems, is where benefits can flip into risk. I once worked with a patient who proudly told me he had increased his coffee intake because he thought he was doing something good for his kidneys. His labs told a different story. His blood pressure crept up, his sleep collapsed, and within months his kidney numbers worsened, not because coffee is bad, but because it was used the wrong way. Let's start with caffeine and blood pressure. In most healthy people, caffeine causes a temporary rise in blood pressure that fades as tolerance develops. But research shows that in caffeine-sensitive individuals, or those with already unstable blood pressure, high doses, especially taken all at once, can cause sustained spikes. Repeated pressure surges inside the kidney's tiny blood vessels, increase mechanical stress on the filtration units. Over time, that stress matters. This is why how much and how fast you drink coffee is just as important as whether you drink it at all. Then there's sleep, which almost no one connects to kidney health. Caffeine has a half-life of roughly 4 to 6 hours, sometimes longer. Drinking coffee in the late afternoon or evening doesn't just make it harder to fall asleep, it reduces deep sleep. And chronic sleep disruption raises inflammatory markers, worsens insulin resistance, and increases sympathetic nervous system activity. All three directly strain the kidneys. In studies, poor sleep quality has been linked to faster kidney function decline, independent of diet. So that late-day cup meant to push through fatigue can quietly undo the very benefits coffee offers earlier in the day. Additives are another hidden problem. Black coffee itself contains a modest amount of potassium that's safe for most people until advanced kidney disease. The real danger often comes from what's added: phosphate-rich creamers, flavored syrups, and ultra-processed sweeteners. Excess phosphate has been associated with vascular calcification and kidney stress, particularly in people with reduced kidney function. This is why labels matter more than most realize. There are also special populations that require caution. Kidney transplant recipients, for example, may be taking medications like tacrolimus with narrow therapeutic windows. Dietary changes, including coffee intake, can alter drug levels in ways that aren't immediately obvious, but can be clinically significant. This isn't about fear, it's about coordination and awareness. If you're watching this and thinking, I've definitely had coffee late or relied on it to survive the day, you're not alone. Be honest, have you ever used coffee to cover up poor sleep or stress? Leave a comment below, because recognizing these patterns is the first step to changing them. The takeaway here is simple but critical: coffee itself isn't the problem. Misuse is. Understanding where coffee crosses from supportive to harmful is what separates protection from risk. But knowing what to avoid still isn't enough. Because the real question most people want answered is this: what does drinking coffee the right way actually look like? And that's where the final piece of this story becomes essential. After all the science, the mechanisms, and the warnings, this is the moment most people have been waiting for, the part where confusion turns into clarity. Because knowledge alone doesn't protect your kidneys. Action does. And the good news is that the right way to drink coffee is far simpler than most people expect. I often tell patients that the goal isn't perfection, it's consistency and awareness. One man in his early 70s once said to me, "I just want to enjoy my coffee without feeling like I'm gambling with my kidneys." That's exactly the balance we're aiming for. For generally healthy adults with stable kidney function, the evidence consistently points to a sweet spot about 2 to 3 cups of coffee per day. This range shows the strongest association with lower kidney disease risk in large population studies. Not 6 cups, not constant refills, just moderate, spaced intake. When coffee is consumed earlier in the day, the body handles caffeine more efficiently, minimizing blood pressure spikes and protecting sleep quality. 2 factors that quietly influence kidney health far more than people realize. For individuals with early-stage chronic kidney disease stages 1 through 3, the approach becomes more personalized. Most research suggests 1 to 3 cups per day can still be appropriate if blood pressure is well controlled and labs are monitored regularly. This isn't about pushing limits, it's about staying within a range that supports metabolic and vascular health without adding stress. Many patients are surprised to learn that completely eliminating coffee doesn't automatically improve kidney numbers, but controlling timing often does. In more advanced stages, such as stage 4 or 5, kidney disease moderation becomes even more important. 1 smaller cup per day may be reasonable for some, but potassium levels, blood pressure, and overall tolerance must guide the decision. This is where partnership with a healthcare provider matters, not because coffee is dangerous, but because kidneys at this stage have less margin for error. Decaffeinated coffee deserves special mention. Decaf retains most of the beneficial polyphenols and antioxidants found in regular coffee with only trace amounts of caffeine. For people who are sensitive to caffeine, struggle with sleep, or experience anxiety, decaf can deliver many of the same protective compounds without triggering the downsides. And preparation matters too. Filtered coffee using paper filters reduces certain lipid-raising compounds found in unfiltered methods like French press or boiled coffee. The final piece is deceptively simple: what you don't add matters as much as what you drink. Keeping coffee mostly black, avoiding phosphate-heavy creamers and sugary syrups, and paying attention to labels can dramatically reduce hidden kidney stress. These small choices compound over time. If you pause for a moment, you'll realize something powerful: protecting your kidneys doesn't require giving up life's small pleasures. It requires understanding them. And when coffee is used intentionally, it becomes part of a routine that supports long-term health rather than undermines it. But even with the right strategy, there's one final mindset shift that determines whether these changes actually stick, and it has nothing to do with coffee itself. That perspective is what truly ties everything together, and it's what we need to talk about next. If you've stayed with me to this point, I want you to take a moment and recognize something important. The fact that you're here means you care about your health, and that matters more than any single lab number. Kidney health is not about being perfect or living in fear of every daily habit. It's about understanding your body, making informed choices, and giving yourself the best possible chance to stay stable for years to come. You don't have to eliminate everything you enjoy. You just have to learn how to use those habits wisely with awareness instead of anxiety. My advice is simple but powerful. Pay attention to patterns, not just numbers. Notice how your body responds. Protect your sleep. Keep your blood pressure under control. Be mindful of what you add to your coffee, not just the coffee itself. And most importantly, don't make decisions based on fear or outdated advice. Medicine evolves, science improves, and your care should evolve with it. You deserve information that is current, balanced, and grounded in real evidence. If this video helped you see coffee, kidney health, or your daily routine more clearly, do yourself a favor and save this video so you can come back to it when questions or doubts creep in. And if you want to stay informed with the latest evidence-based insights on kidney health, creatinine, GFR, and how everyday habits affect your kidneys, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I share updated medical knowledge regularly, so you're not left guessing or relying on misinformation. I want you to leave this video with hope, not worry. Kidney disease does not mean your future is already written. Small, consistent choices can slow progression, protect function, and preserve quality of life far longer than most people realize. Take care of yourself, stay curious, and remember knowledge isn't just power. In kidney health, it's protection.